Section 28. METSORA. 14. And the Lord spake with Moshe, saying, This shall be the law for the leper. On the day of his purification he shall be brought to the priest. And the priest shall go forth out of the camp, and look, and behold, the leper hath been healed of his leprosy. Then the priest shall direct that he who is to be cleansed take 2 birds, alive and clean, and wood of the cedar, and scarlet wool, and hyssop. And the priest shall instruct the killer to kill one of the birds in an earthen vessel with spring water. Let him take the living bird with the cedar wood, and the scarlet, and the hyssop, and dip them and the living bird in the blood of the bird that had been killed, and in the spring water. And let him sprinkle it upon the face of him who is to be cleansed of the leprosy 7 times, and cleanse him, and send forth the living bird over the face of the field. And it will be that if that man is again to be stricken with leprosy, the living bird will come back to his house on that day, and may be held fit to be eaten. But the bird that had been killed the priest shall bury in the presence of the leper. And he who is cleansed shall wash his clothes, and shave off all his hair, and wash himself in water, and be clean, and afterward he may enter the camp, but shall dwell without his tent, the house of his habitation, and come not to the side of his wife for 7 days. And on the 7th day he shall again shave off all the hair of his head, of the beard, and of the eyebrows, even all his hair shall he shave, and dip his clothes, and wash his flesh in water, and he is clean. And on the 8th day let him take 2 lambs unblemished, and 1 ewe lamb of the year unblemished, and 3/10 of flour for the mincha mingled with olive oil, and 1 log of olive oil. And the priest who purifieth the man who is to be cleansed shall make him stand with the lambs before the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of ordinance. And the priest shall take 1 lamb, and offer him as an oblation for trespass with the log of oil, and uplift them all elevation before the Lord. And the slayer shall kill the lamb in the place where the sin offering is killed, and the burnt offering in the holy place, because, as the sin offering, so the trespass offering is the priest's, it is most sacred. And the priest shall take of the blood of the trespass offering, and shall put it upon the middle point of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and upon the middle joint of his right hand, and on the middle joint of his right foot. And the priest, with his right hand, shall take some for the log of oil, and pour it upon the priest's left hand, and the priest shall dip his right hand finger in the oil which is in his left hand, and sprinkle the oil with his finger 7 times. And of what remaineth of the oil that is in his hand the priest shall put some upon the cartilage of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and upon the middle finger of his right hand, and on the middle toe of his right foot, upon the spot whereon he had first put the blood of the trespass offering. And that which yet remaineth of the oil that is in the priest's hand he shall put upon the head of him who is to be cleansed, and the priest shall make atonement for him before the Lord. And the priest shall perform the oblation of the sin offering, and make atonement for him who is to be cleansed from his defilement, and afterwards shall he kill the burnt offering. And the priest shall offer the burnt offering with the mincha at the altar, and the priest shall make atonement for him, and he will be clean. But if he be a poor man, and his hand have not sufficiency, let him take 1 lamb for the trespass offering to be an elevation to make atonement for him, and 1/10 of flour mingled with olive oil for the mincha, and a log of olive oil, and 2 large turtle doves, or 2 young pigeons, of the sufficiency of his hand, and let 1 be for the sin and 1 for the burnt offering. And he shall bring them on the 8th day for his purification unto the priest at the door of the tabernacle of ordinance. And the priest shall take the lamb for the trespass offering, and the log of oil, and uplift them an elevation before the Lord. And the slayer shall kill the lamb of the trespass offering, and the priest shall take the blood of the trespass offering, and put it upon the middle cartilage of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the middle joint of his right hand, and on the middle joint of his right foot. And the priest shall pour some of the oil with his right hand into the priest's left band. And the priest with the finger of his right band shall sprinkle of the oil that is in his left hand 7 times before the Lord. And the priest shall put of the oil that is in his hand on the middle cartilage of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the middle joint of his right hand, and on the middle joint of his right foot, upon the spot whereon he first put the blood of the trespass offering. And what remaineth of the oil that is upon the priest's hand he shall put upon the head of him who is to be cleansed, to atone for him before the Lord. And the priest shall perform the offering of one of the large turtle doves, or of the pigeons of which his hand had sufficiency, that which his hand was sufficient to bring. Let him bring one for the sin, and one for the burnt offering with the oblation of the minkah, and let the priest make atonement for him who is to be cleansed before the Lord. This is the decree of instruction for him in whom is the plague of leprosy. If there be not sufficiency in his hands to bring the greater oblations, let him bring of these oblations which are easier, and which are here explained, on the day of his purification. And the Lord spake with Moshe and with Aaron, saying, When you have entered upon the land of Canaan which I will give you for a possession, and a man who hath builded a house by rapine finds that I have put the plague of leprosy in the house of the land of your inheritance, and he who owneth the house shall come to the priest, saying, There is a plague, as it appeareth to me, in the house. Then the priest shall direct that they make the house empty before the priest cometh to inspect the house, that all that is in the house may not be condemned as unclean, and after that the priest shall go in to inspect the house. And the priest shall look, and, behold, if the plague be like the color of 2 beans crushed with stones, and goeth lower than the 4 walls, green or red, and its appearance be deeper than the walls, the priest shall go out from the house to the door of the house, and shut up the house 7 days. And the priest, returning on the 7th day, shall look, and, behold, if the breadth of the plague hath increased in the wall of the house. Then the priest shall direct that they break out the stones which have the plague in them, and throw them without the city into an unclean place. And they shall scrape the inside of the house round about, and throw the dust which they have scraped off without the city into an unclean place. And they shall take other stones, and insert them in the place of the former stones, and let other mortar be taken, and the house be replastered. Jerusalem. And they shall plaster the house. But if the plague return and increase in the house, after the stones have been broken out, and after the house hath been scraped, and after that it hath been replastered, then the priest shall come and look, and behold, if the breadth of the plague hath increased in the house, it a plain leprosy in the house, it is unclean. Then shall they destroy that house, and its stones, and its timber, and all the plaster of the house, and shall remove it without the city to an unclean place. And whoever goeth into the house in the days that it is shut up shall be unclean until evening. And whoever sleepeth in the house shall wash his clothes, and whoever eateth in the house shall wash his clothes. But if, having gone in, the priest looketh, and, behold, the breadth of the plague hath not increased in the house after the house hath been plastered, then the priest shall make the house to be clean, for the plague hath healed. And he shall take, for the purification plague of the house, 2 turtle doves, and cedarwood, and scarlet, and hyssop, and the slayer shall kill 1 turtle dove in a vessel of earthenware with spring water, and he shall take the cedarwood, and the hyssop, and the scarlet, and the living bird, and dip them in the blood of the bird that had been killed, and in the spring water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. And he shall purify the house with the blood, with the living bird, and with the cedarwood, and with the hyssop, and with the scarlet. And the living bird he shall send forth out of the town upon the face of the field, and shall atone for the house, and it shall be clean. But if it is to be that the house will be again struck with leprosy, the bird on that day will return, and may be fit for food. But the bird that was killed shall the priest bury in the presence of the owner of the house. This is the decree of instruction in the law for every plague of leprosy and scorbutis, and for leprosy in apparel, or in a house, and for tumors, scars, and inflamed blotches. Jerusalem. And for tumors, scars, and inflamed blotches, that the priest may teach the people to discern between the day of darkness in which they may not be able to see the plague, and a day of light, and between a man who is unclean and a man who is clean. This shall be the decree of instruction for the leprosy. 15. And the Lord spake with Moshe and with Aaron, saying, Speak with the sons of Israel, and say to them, A man, whether young or old, who hath a defluxion from his flesh, when he hath seen it 3 times, is unclean. and this shall be his uncleanness. The appearance of the color of white in his defluxion inflaming the defluxion of his flesh, or when his flesh hath stopped from his defluxion, it is his uncleanness. Every bed on which one who hath such defluxion lieth shall be unclean, and everything on which such an one sitteth shall be unclean. And the man who toucheth his bed shall wash his clothes, and wash himself in 40 seahs of water, and shall be unclean until evening. And whoever may sit upon a thing whereon such an one who hath an issue hath sat, let him wash his clothes, and bathe in 40 seahs of water, and be unclean until evening. And whoever may touch the flesh of one having an issue, let him wash his clothes, and bathe in 40 seahs of water, and be unclean until evening. And if he who hath an issue spit upon any one who is clean, let him wash his clothes, and bathe in 40 seahs of water, and be unclean until evening. And every girdle a saddle upon which he who hath an issue rideth shall be unclean. And whoever toucheth anything that hath been under him shall be unclean until evening, and he who carrieth them shall wash his clothes, and bathe in 40 seahs of water, and be unclean until evening. And whoever toucheth him who hath the issue, and washeth not his hands in water, shall be unclean. If he be a man, he shall wash his clothes, and bathe in 40 seahs of water, and be unclean until the evening. And any vessel of earthenware whose inside may have been touched by him who hath the issue shall be broken, and any vessel of wood shall be washed in water. But if he who hath had the issue shall have ceased from it, he shall number to himself 7 days for his purification, and wash his clothes, and bathe his flesh in spring water, to be clean. And on the 8th day let him take for himself 2 large turtle doves, or 2 young pigeons, and bring them before the Lord at the gate of the tabernacle of ordinance, and deliver them to the priest. And the priest shall make one a sin offering and one a burnt offering, and the priest shall atone for him before the Lord, and he shall be cleansed from his issue. But if a man sin through ignorance and seed goeth from him, let him wash all his flesh in 40 seahs of water, and be unclean until evening. And any garment of skin on which seed may be shall be washed in water, and be unclean until evening. And secondly, a woman with whom a man lieth shall wash in 40 seahs of water, and be unclean until evening. And if a woman hath an issue of blood, red or dark, yellow as saffron, or water of clay, or as red wine mixed with 2 parts of water, she hath an uncleanness of blood in her flesh, she shall dwell apart 7 days. Any one who toucheth her shall be unclean until evening. Whatever such an one shall lie upon during the time of her separation shall be unclean, and whatever such an one sitteth upon during the time of her separation shall be unclean. And whoever toucheth her bed shall wash his clothes, and bathe himself with 40 seahs of water, and be unclean until evening. And whoever toucheth anything upon which such an one hath sat shall wash his clothes, and bathe in 40 seahs of water, and be unclean until evening. And if the effusion of her body be upon her bed, or on a thing upon any part of which she sitteth, what time any one toucheth it, he shall be unclean until evening. If a man lie with her in the time of her separation, he shall be unclean 7 days, and any bed upon which he lieth shall be unclean. But a woman who hath the defluxion of blood 3 days beyond the time of her separation, or when it floweth after the days of her separation, all the days of the uncleanness of her defluxion shall she be unclean, he who lieth with her shall be unclean. And any bed upon which such any one lieth all the days of her defluxion shall be as the bed which was accounted hers during the time of her separation. And anything upon which such an one sitteth shall be unclean as the uncleanness of her separation. And whoever toucheth those things shall be unclean, and shall wash his clothes, and bathe in 40 seahs of water, and be unclean until the evening. But when she is cleansed from her issue, let her number to herself 7 days, and afterwards wash in 40 seahs of water, and be clean. And on the 7th day, let her take for herself 2 turtle doves, or 2 young pigeons eons, and bring them to the priest at the door of the tabernacle of ordinance, and the priest shall make one a sin offering, and the other a burnt offering, and the priest shall make atonement before the Lord, on account of the defluxion of her uncleanness. So shall you separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness, and make them to be separate from the wives at the time of the seclusion, and to give not occasion that they die for their uncleanness in defiling my tabernacle, where the glory of my Shekinah dwelleth among them. This is the decree of instruction for him who hath the defluction, and for him whose seed goeth forth and defileth him, and for her who is unclean in the time of her separation, and for any one who hath an issue, whether male or female, and for a man who lieth with the unclean. All these shall be advised of their uncleanness, and, when purified, shall bring the oblations that make atonement for them.